Fuck J. Cole. We killed him. We killed him. We the reason he did.
Y'all know why he did.
The reason why Michael killed Jizzle is because her and Michael was still getting it on. Her and Michael was still making that love lotion. Why?
The rapper's girlfriend is inside the house, waiting on her man to walk back through the door, when she hears the shots and comes running out into the daylight, and what she sees is not a stranger. It is a face she knows, a man she used to be with, the father of her other children, already halfway to his car. Listen to what she runs into.
She said she ran to the door and noticed Michael, who is her other child's father. She noticed Michael speed walking towards his car. She yelled at him, "Why did you shoot him?" Meaning Casino.
She screamed one question at the man walking away, and by the accounts that came out later, he stopped just long enough to say something back to her, something she has said she will never forget and has never once repeated in public. That answer is the whole knot at the center of this story, because it ties a girlfriend, her ex, and a newborn baby boy into one of the ugliest triangles rap has ever produced. We are going to pull that knot apart thread by thread, because the rapper dying on that porch was Casino Jizzle out of Memphis. The man walking to his car was the father of her older kids, and the little boy caught in the middle was Casino's own son. But before we get into Casino Jizzle's story, let us start with this story, because to really understand how a beef between two men who share the same woman ends with a body on the ground and a mother screaming in her yard, you have to go back a few years and a few states over, to Atlanta, to two boys who came up loving each other like blood, and to the night one of them put the other one in the ground and walked away without so much as a single charge on his record. Atlanta knew him as Bankroll Fresh, but his mama named him Trentavious Zaman White, and he was born on August 2nd, 1987. He came up in Atlanta's Zone 3 on the west side, an area that shaped a whole generation of Southern rap, with family ties that stretched all the way down to New Orleans. By the middle of the 2010s, he was one of the most exciting new voices coming out of the South, with a raspy, stuttering flow that made trap songs feel brand new again.
Street politician, you know I don't play with these niggas, bro. Every time you come to me, I make something out of nothing, bro. Like every time. When you sit right here and witness this shit, every time I have rats on me, nigga. Real trap, nigga. Yeah, that's what it is, nigga. Yeah.
And records like Hot Boy pushed him from the underground into the conversation. He landed with street execs, the same camp connected to 2 Chainz, pulled cosigns from major artists, and at 28 years old, he was standing right on the edge of the kind of success you do not come back from. To understand what the world lost, you have to understand how far he had already come. His parents split when he was only 3, and he was mostly raised by his mother, Teresa Price, who drove a bus and pushed him towards school and stability, while his stepfather stepped in early and later helped guide his music. He caught the rap bug young, somewhere around 8 years old, studying legends like Tupac and the Notorious B.I.G., until their style bled into his own. He first started rapping under the name Young Fresh back in 2006, getting his early looks through features on Gucci Mane records, and by the time he dropped his Life of a Hot Boy mixtapes, he had grown into a sound nobody else in Atlanta had, pulling cosigns from names as big as Drake. He had done the hard part. He had climbed all the way out of the pile and into the light, which is exactly what makes the way he died land so much heavier. The man who ended up killing him was not a stranger, and he was not a rival from some other city trying to make a name. He was No Plug, real name Mendez Owens, born August 17, 1989, out of that same Atlanta West Side. Long before he ever touched a microphone, No Plug had made his name the street way, earning respect through hustling and carrying himself like a man who had already gotten money on his own terms, repping both Atlanta's Allen Temple and the Ninth Ward down in New Orleans. He did not even come to rap seriously until later, and by his own telling, it was Bankroll himself who pushed him to start, which is one more layer of what makes this so painful, because the man who eventually killed him was the same man he had first encouraged to pick up the pen. The two of them went back further than almost anybody else in either of their lives, back to when they were little kids running the same streets, sharing the same days. When No Plug finally sat down years later to explain the whole thing, the very first thing he wanted the world to understand was how tight the two of them used to be, because without that piece, nothing else about this makes any sense. Hear him tell it in his own words.
Okay, well, we met like when we was probably like 10 or 12, some shit like that, you know what I'm saying? Like, we was tight. We always been tight, you know what I'm saying? Like, he was my boy. That was my boy, you know what I'm saying? Like, our friendship always been good, you know what I'm saying? Until, like, a certain level of his career came about, you know what I'm saying?
Read that last part again, because that is exactly where the whole thing starts to bend. Their bond held strong all the way up until Bankroll's music career took off, and once the fame arrived, the distance arrived right behind it. No Plug stayed exactly where he had always been, out on the block, deep in the street life he knew, while Bankroll was in the studio with producers and rappers most people only ever see on a screen. They still spoke when they crossed paths, but that everyday closeness, the kind where you are pulling up on each other for no reason at all, quietly slipped away, and into that empty space crept the two things that have wrecked more real friendships than anything else in the world, which are money and women. The money part was simple envy, the quiet kind that builds up slow when one friend is eating good and the other one starts to feel left behind. By his mid-20s, No Plug had built himself a comfortable life the street way, living in a midtown Atlanta condo and pushing luxury cars and custom jewelry, so this was never really about being broke. It was about watching a childhood friend outgrow the world the two of you built together. The women part, though, was messier, because both men had at different times been with the same woman, and No Plug never bothered to hide it. When he finally spoke on the falling out, he gathered all of it, the money, the women, the old grudges, and dropped it into one pile of resentment that had been stacking up quietly for years. Hear how casually he admits the thing that was really eating at them both.
Like, everything always been good, but at a certain point, females he was talking to who I hadn't already ran through, like, it was jealousy, all kind of stuff, bro. Like, I couldn't believe him.
On top of the jealousy sat one more grudge, and the wild part is that it grew out of something that was supposed to be good. In late 2015, there was a community turkey drive in the 9th Ward, a giveaway handing out toys and food to the neighborhood kids, and Bankroll rolled through wanting to be a part of it after passing out gifts in his own area. The problem was that the local dudes, some of them tied to No Plug, did not feel he had any real claim to their block, even though he had once filmed his Hot Boy video right there when everything between them was still peaches and cream. So they walked him out. Nobody robbed him, and nobody put hands on him, because No Plug says he made sure of that, but being escorted out of a neighborhood he thought had adopted him left Bankroll feeling deeply betrayed. He blamed No Plug for it, and he carried that hurt around like a stone in his pocket for months, bringing it up over and over, unable to let it die. All of that old baggage finally came due on the night of March 4th, 2016, at Street Exec Studios in Northwest Atlanta. No Plug had stopped through on his way to a show in South Carolina, just trying to pass out his own music, and by some accounts, a mutual friend had even invited him there to try and squash the old beef for good. But word got to Bankroll that his old friend was in the building, and he came down the stairs, still stuck on that 9th Ward night, unable to leave it in the past. No Plug remembers the exact first words that came out of his mouth, and they were not about music or peace. They were about the block.
Goddamn, like 5 to 10 minutes of me being in there, he approached me from behind, you know what I'm saying? First thing he said was like, damn, bro, why you let them put me out the 9? You know what I'm saying?
There is a small detail here that tells you how fast a quiet night can flip. By No Plug's account, Bankroll did not just happen to walk up on him. A woman connected to Bankroll spotted No Plug come into the building and ran straight to tell him, relaying the message that his old friend was downstairs. And that little bit of information is what pulled Bankroll down those steps with all that old hurt riding on his shoulders. One person passing along one piece of news, and a peace attempt that a mutual friend had set up turned into the last argument two childhood friends would ever have. Words turned into shoving, and the shoving turned into both of them tumbling down a flight of stairs together before a mutual childhood friend named C-Note jumped in and pulled them apart before anyone even threw a real punch. No Plug says he tried to leave right then, telling himself the whole thing was too messy to keep going. But as he walked off, he realized he had dropped both of his phones during the scuffle, so he turned the car around and headed back to the studio to grab them. That short drive back is the hinge the entire case turns on, because when he pulled up the second time, according to his account, Bankroll came back out with a crowd of armed men behind him and a rifle in his own hands, and the first shot went straight toward No Plug's car.
He came out with his gun and shit happened. You know what I'm saying? When he came out playing with the shit, like just playing with the shit, he fired a shot and shit happened. We pulled off, he ended up dead. As simple as shit was, like.
When the smoke finally cleared, there were more than 50 shell casings scattered from the studio door all the way out into the street, and Bankroll had been hit in the abdomen. He did not survive the wound. No Plug fled the scene, but he moved fast to protect himself, calling a lawyer, paying $10,000 for representation, and then turning himself in for questioning that only lasted a matter of minutes. What saved him from a cell was the footage, because the studio's own surveillance cameras backed up his side of the story. Years later, when local news finally dug into the closed case file, they laid the whole sequence out on screen for the public to judge for themselves.
No Plug and his crew are the ones in the Dodge Charger. The man holding the rifle, that's Bankroll, surrounded by 5 other armed men. And you can see Bankroll Fresh fires the first shot towards the Charger. The glass on the front door of the studio shatters.
The police reached the exact same conclusion the camera did. In July of 2018, more than 2 full years after the shooting, Atlanta police closed the case as self-defense with no charges filed, ruling that because Bankroll fired first, the man who fired back was inside his rights under the law. Watch how the reporter framed that stunning turn, where the victim everybody had grieved was suddenly the one being called the aggressor.
Police are now saying that Bankroll Fresh was the actual aggressor that night, armed with a gun.
Our investigation determined that he was shot in self-defense.
The story did not go quiet after that, though. Around that same window, 16 rounds tore through the home of Bankroll's mother while she slept, and 2 of those rounds grazed his cousin, though police said at the time they had no proof it was tied to the old shootout. And the rap world stayed split right down the middle over the whole thing. 21 Savage, who is close with No Plug, went on camera and summed up the killing in a way that pointed straight back at the jealousy everybody already suspected was underneath it.
No Plug just beat that murder charge, you know, with the whole Bankroll Fresh situation.
He pulled the gun, shot the motherfucker. A couple shots got fired back. He got hit. I leave.
Those interviews did not sit well with everybody. A lot of people felt No Plug came off boastful, like he was almost proud of surviving the man he used to call his brother, and the sit-downs he did drew heavy backlash across the rap world for how he talked about it. Even 21 Savage, who had defended him hard, later admitted he regretted some of the loose comments he made about the whole situation. Life kept moving for the man who walked away, and No Plug went right back to making music, even linking with 21 Savage on a record called Don't Play in 2017, while Bankroll's catalog kept climbing long after he was gone, racking up well over 100 million views.
I'm going hard as ever, man. New shit on the way. New whips on the way, nigga. New jewelry, nigga. New crib, new spots, nigga. New motherfucking.
As fans held on to the sound, he never got to fully deliver. One man got to keep living and rapping, and the other one became a legacy his people had to protect. That gap right there, between the one who survived and the one who did not, is the quiet cruelty that sits underneath every one of these stories. That is our first story. 2 boys who grew up loving each other, slowly pulled apart by money and a woman, until one of them was gone, and the other one walked out of that interrogation room free. Our second story lives in a different city, with a different flavor of pain, because this time, the man who pulled the trigger was not a childhood friend gone cold. This time, he was the father of the woman's other children, and the fight was not really about a block or a rap career or old money. It was about her, and it was about the little boy she had just brought into the world. Casino Jizzle was born Robert Tunstall in Memphis, Tennessee, and he came up on the city's east side around neighborhoods like Orange Mound. He started rapping as a teenager, leaning on a high, sharp flow that cut through the noise of a city absolutely packed with talent. And by 2023, he had built something real and something his own. He founded his own label to lift up the artists around him, instead of waiting on a major to come save him, and his biggest local records pulled in millions of views and streams while he stayed fully independent. He was not some name that only mattered on his own block. He had a growing following, real momentum, and a 19-track album called Duh, already loaded up and ready to go. scheduled to drop on July 7, 2023, just days out from the moment his whole life was about to change. But the road behind him was heavy, and Memphis had tried to swallow Casino more than once. He had a guilty plea for theft and robbery back in 2014, and something far more serious landed in 2016, when he was charged in connection with a deadly shooting at a university that left a 19-year-old dead and several others hurt, a case that only fell apart when a key witness took back their story. That collapse spared him a possible life sentence and let him keep building. Then in 2019, in maybe the most frightening moment of his entire life, he was shot in the back and the chest outside a Chuck E. Cheese while he was there with his girlfriend and her children cashing in tickets. And that Chuck E. Cheese ambush was not even his first brush with gunfire that year, because he had already survived a drive-by at his own home earlier in 2019, before the attack in the parking lot. He took those bullets and he survived them, and afterward he talked about that day like it flipped a switch in him, a reason to start pulling back from the street life for good, especially now that he was somebody's father. In interviews, he spoke openly about wanting to get out, about how he was trying to leave the danger behind for the sake of his family, using the music as the way out rather than the thing that dragged him back in. That is the bitter irony sitting on top of this whole case, because a man who was actively trying to walk away from the violence still could not outrun the person who had a reason to come find him. Before we get to the day it all ended, understand that Casino was not some small-time name hoping to blow. He came up on the east side, jumping into street life around 13 while chasing rap at the same time, shaped by local greats like Don Tripp. And instead of waiting on anybody to hand him a deal, he built his own label to put on the people around him. The numbers backed it up too. His biggest records pulled serious weight, with one song passing 2.4 million views and another climbing past 1.1 million, with a remix featuring Asian Doll. And across the board he had stacked up over 10 million streams on Apple Music, more than 46 million views on YouTube, and around 67,000 followers on Instagram. He had released a run of projects since 2018, and dropped his debut album in 2021. So by the summer of 2023, he was not climbing anymore. He had arrived, and the album sitting on the launch pad was supposed to be the biggest moment of his career. What made him easy to root for is that he never framed himself as bigger than where he came from. He built that label to pour back into his own community and the artists around him, leaning on the do-it-yourself spirit Memphis is known for. And a lot of his music carried a message about survival and about lifting the people next to you rather than stepping on them. He was, in a lot of ways, exactly the kind of story a struggling city needs. A young man who took real hardship and turned it into something that fed other people, which is why his death hit so many folks in Memphis as more than just another headline. That last part matters, because the man behind the gangster records had a soft center that almost never made it into the headlines. Hear him talk about the one thing he decided mattered more than any of it.
All right, so what has being a father taught you about life?
Man, it really ain't nothing else more important out here. You feel me? Your family. You feel me?
Family is exactly where this story gets tangled, because the woman he loved was named Brianna Hollins, and her life reached back to a chapter that started before Casino ever came into the picture. Hollins shared children with another man named Michael Clayton, and she also had a child with Casino. So picture the setup for a second. You have two grown men, both of them fathers to kids by the same woman, both of them orbiting the same household and the same front door. The title of this whole video calls Clayton her ex, the man she used to be with, and that is the cleanest, most honest way to put it, because Clayton was the father of her older children, while Casino was the man she was with now, and the father of her youngest, a brand new baby boy. Two fathers, one woman, one address, and a whole lot of history nobody ever really put to rest. And here is where the neighborhood talk gets loud, because plenty of people around Memphis did not believe this stayed a clean, respectful co-parenting situation. Word going around was that Hollins may have still been close with Clayton even while she was fully with Casino, playing both sides in a way that kept a fire lit under two men who already could not stand each other. Nobody outside that house can tell you for certain what was true and what was just street gossip, and the man breaking it down said as much himself. But you do not need every detail confirmed to see the danger in it. When you take two fathers who have already shot at each other, tie them to the same woman, and let them keep drifting through the same front door, you are not managing a situation. You are lighting a fuse and hoping it burns slow. The bad blood between the two men did not appear out of nowhere on the day Casino died. It reached back at least to 2022, when Casino allegedly shot at Clayton after Clayton said something about Casino's son, an incident Casino later put right into a song. Sit with how heavy that is. This was not a quiet little disagreement between two men who barely crossed paths. These were two fathers who had already traded gunfire once before, tied together by the same woman, the same children, and the same front door. And somehow everybody around them kept acting like that was something you could manage. Like you could just tell two men who had shot at each other to be cool and share a household in peace. Word was that Hollins tried to keep exactly that peace, telling both men she had kids by them and asking them to leave it alone. But you cannot always talk two men down when one of them believes the other one moved in on his whole life. And it did not stay cool. On July 4th, 2023, around 6:30 in the evening, on Goldbriar Lane in northeast Memphis, Casino was shot multiple times in the head and face at the home of Hollins' own mother. By the accounts that spread afterward, it almost played out like the cruelest kind of bad luck, with Casino heading back into the house at the very same moment Clayton happened to be outside. Hollins was inside the whole time, waiting on her man to come back, and she did not even know the two of them were about to run into each other until the gunshots cracked through that 4th of July evening.
That's how we did it. I was out here smoking. I'm like, started seeing people walking across the yard. I'm like, wait a minute, they kept looking at me like, what's going on?
They was in some type of Charger or something. It was some type of fast car. Because you heard it as they pulled off. Like you heard them when you put out. Because it woke me up out my sleep. I thought it was some fireworks, but then I heard a car pull out. I'm like, dang, they probably just got to shoot or something. But I ain't know nobody.
That is when she ran to the door and straight into the moment you heard at the very top of this video, screaming at the man walking away, begging him to tell her why he shot her man. And by the accounts that came out, he did answer her, with those words she has carried in silence ever since. The cruelty of the timing is hard to shake, because Casino had been out promoting his brand new music just hours before he was killed, according to his manager Angie Strange, who had to confirm his death to the world. One minute he was pushing the album that was supposed to change his life, and the next he was on the ground. After the shots, Clayton took off in a black vehicle, leaving Hollins screaming in that yard, and the people out on the street for the holiday saw enough to describe it plainly afterward, talking about how somebody walked up on him and shot him in the face, how the blood was already there, and how Hollins came out and tried to help a man who was already gone before she reached him. His death also did not happen in a vacuum, because Casino joined a long and painful list of Memphis artists lost to violence in just a few short years, a city that keeps burying its own young talent faster than it can lift them up. The thing that made this case move as fast as it did was that the whole tragedy did not happen in the dark or behind closed doors. It happened on the 4th of July, with a neighborhood full of people out barbecuing and laughing, and one house nearby was quietly watching the entire time without anyone meaning for it to. Listen to how the person breaking it all down explained where the key evidence came from.
Now, Brianna said that the whole thing was caught on camera footage. Not from a camera at her house, but from a camera from her neighbor's house. They caught the whole altercation on camera.
That footage, combined with a street full of witnesses who saw it all unfold, handed the police almost everything they needed. Memphis police issued a first-degree murder warrant for Michael Clayton on July 5th, just one single day after the shooting, and that kind of speed tells you exactly how strong the evidence against him was. Hear how quickly the case came together.
Man, Memphis police has already issued a warrant for Michael Clayton, who is Brianna's her first child's father. They done issued a warrant out for him for first-degree murder.
The manhunt did not drag out either. Clayton was arrested on July 10th near the Shelby County Jail, taken into custody without any trouble at all. less than a week after he sped off from that yard. But the arrest is not the part of this that haunts people. The part that haunts it is who was standing there watching when it happened, because by the accounts that came out, Clayton had come to that house to pick up his own children, and those kids were reportedly right there in the middle of it.
The fact that the kids, from what Brianna was saying, the kids seen it go down. Because remember, he was there to pick up his kids. His kids seen what he did to Casino Jizzle. They seen their father shoot and kill the stepfather.
There were other things stacking up under the surface too, the kind of small cuts that push a man past reason. Casino had not kept the old beef quiet. After the 2022 shooting, he put the whole thing into his music, dissing Clayton openly for the world to hear, which is about the loudest way to keep a wound from healing. On top of that, people close to the situation pointed to pictures floating around of Casino, with the kids throwing up gang signs, and for a man watching another man raise his children in a whole different set of colors, that is the kind of thing that can eat you alive from the inside. None of that excuses anything, and none of it makes the ending anything other than a tragedy, but it does show you how many little sparks were flying around long before the actual gunfire. Now think all the way back to that very first clip, the one about her and Clayton supposedly still being close, and you can start to see the shape of the answer Hollins has kept locked inside. A lot of people in Memphis came to believe the beef was never really about the old gunfire from 2022 at all, that the shooting from a year earlier was just the surface, and that what actually pulled the trigger was a woman who was still, at least in the eyes of the neighborhood, somehow connected to both men at the same time. Nobody outside that circle knows the full truth of it, and Hollins has never laid it out. But whatever the exact reason, the grief was real and it spread far and wide. Hollins poured her heartbreak out online, writing that she was lost without him, and standing guard over his memory and their child against every troll who came at her. And the pain did not stop with her, because within days a 19-year-old relative of Casino's was arrested for threatening a mass shooting at a club as payback. And then there is the part that outlives everybody in this story, the children. Sit with the weight of it for a second, because the youngest boy is Casino's son, while the older boys belong to Clayton, which means that little one is going to grow up under the same roof as brothers whose father took his own father away from him. Those older boys will still get to visit their dad, still get to hear his voice, still get to be hugged by him, while the baby of the family has nothing but a grave and a name. That is not the kind of thing a family recovers from clean. That is a crack running straight down the middle of a bloodline, one that can turn brothers into something colder as they get old enough to understand what actually happened on that 4th of July, and it is the true, lasting cost of a beef that could have been walked away from. So now we have watched two men die inside a circle they trusted, one in Atlanta and one in Memphis, and both of those stories at least had a woman standing somewhere near the center of the fight. Our third story is different in a way that might sit even heavier on you, because this young man did not die over a romance or a shared bed or a child support fight. He died over a phone, a group chat, and a set of rap rivalries that live and breathe entirely on the internet, and unlike the first two, the man who killed him never spent a single day fighting a charge for it. His name was J4, or WAP Block J4, and he was only 19 years old, a rising drill rapper out of St. Louis, tied to the 1448 and WAP Block crew, and closely linked to a more established local artist named Mo P. To the internet, he was just another young face in a violent scene, easy to scroll past. But to the people who actually knew him, he was something a lot warmer than that. A mentor from a local youth program that works to steer kids away from the streets described him as a happy, caring young man who loved music and loved his family. The kind of kid who, with a little more support and a few different breaks, could have gone a completely different way with his life. The mentor who spoke about him was named Tavon Brooks, out of a program built to pull young men away from exactly the life that swallowed J4, and he had only known the kid for about a year before he died, long enough to see the potential and to believe that steady support might have carried him somewhere safe. Inside the drill scene, though, J4 was not a kid with potential. He was already a name, known widely as the face of 1448, a young rapper carrying the flag for a whole hood on his back, and that flag is a heavy thing to carry at 19, because it makes you a target for everybody who wants to knock the flag down. Every set of eyes that admired him from his own block came paired with a set of eyes that wanted to end him. And at that age, with that much attention, a young man can start to feel untouchable right up until the moment he learns he never was. You can feel that energy for yourself in the footage of him back home in his own neighborhood, proud of where he came from and hungry to be seen by the world.
Who you with,
shit, man? I'm J4 shit. Look me up on Instagram, YouTube shit, J4 shit.
Say no more J4.
The world he was moving through was St. Louis drill. And if you do not know that world, here is the short version so the ending lands the way it should. It runs on neighborhood loyalty, on which block you claim and who you claim it against.
Hey, thought we don't smoke HB! Boy, your goofy ass the fuck! On my daddy! You need a cigarette!
On trading insults and threats through songs and live streams until the words stop being words and spill off the screen into the real world. J4 and his people held down one side of that, the 1448 crew out of the Peabody area, while their rivals came out of a set connected to Frenchtown. What makes drill so dangerous is how tight the loop is between the internet and the pavement. A diss that starts as a few bars in a song or a few words on a live stream does not stay online, because in this scene, disrespect has to be answered in the real world or it follows you, and young men end up recording, streaming, and trolling their enemies in ways that turn a phone into a loaded weapon all by itself. Some accounts of J4's final morning describe him being on a group call or a stream as he moved, and in a beef that raw, being watched and being followed can mean the exact same thing. And this was not some far-off war either. It was so close that the opposition sometimes lived right across the street, close enough to see. The saddest part of the whole thing is that these two sides were not always enemies. By his mother's account, J4 and the very people he ended up standing in front of had once been friends who fell out, but kept right on talking, morning after morning, in the same group chat, which is the detail that makes everything that follows so hard to swallow. Listen to him standing in his own hood, saying the exact thing that makes the ending so cruel.
I ain't never felt more safe in my life.
That false sense of safety is the entire tragedy packed into one breath, because the reason J4 walked up to that door was not to shoot anyone or to spray a house. According to his mother, the other side had been talking openly about killing her, watching her movements, even telling her son what car she was driving. And J4 went over there believing he could talk it down the same easy way they all talked every single morning in that chat. In her telling, this was a son trying to shield his mother from a threat, not a troll chasing a viral clip. And the timeline she laid out makes it even harder, because these were not two silent enemies waiting to ambush each other. By her account, the two sides were still talking in that group chat the very morning it happened, and only a few hours later J4 walked up to that door believing the same daily back and forth would carry him through. That is what daily familiarity does in a live beef. It blurs the line between the person you joke with in the morning and the person who might kill you by noon, and it can make walking up to an enemy's door feel a whole lot safer than it ever really was. When her statement got out, the response was split right down the middle, and that split says a lot about the world these young men are living in. On one side, you had people aching for the family, saying it was heartbreaking to watch these children keep dying and leaving their parents to grieve. On the other side, you had people who felt he made a fatal mistake no matter the reason, warning that you simply do not walk up on the place where your ops lay their head, no matter how many times you have all been talking. Both sides can be true at once. A young man can be trying to protect his mother and still be walking straight into the last mistake of his life, and that is exactly the kind of tragedy that leaves a whole community arguing with itself. She said it about as plainly as a grieving mother possibly could, and her words are the closest thing this whole case has to the truth of what was in his head. In her own words, posted for everyone to see after his death, she wrote, "She explained that the two sides talked in that group chat every single day, which is the exact reason her son felt comfortable walking up to that door unarmed, truly believing the people inside would never actually hurt him. He had no weapon in his hands, only his phone, because in his mind he was going to have a conversation, not a shootout. That is the piece the viral video could never show you, and it is the piece that changes how the whole thing feels once you know it. But the door did not open to a conversation. On February 28, 2026, around 11 in the morning, J4 walked up to an apartment on the 1200 block of South 13th Street in the Peabody-Darst-Webby neighborhood, dressed in all black, holding nothing but that phone. He knocked a few times, and a doorbell camera captured every single second of what came next. The instant the door cracked open, gunfire came ripping out from inside, catching him several times, and he tried to turn and run before he crumpled right there on the porch. He was rushed to a hospital, but he did not survive the wounds. The whole thing was captured in a short surveillance clip, only about 18 seconds long, and that tiny window is what the entire country ended up arguing over. On every frame of the visible footage, he had no weapon at all in his hands, which is precisely why that clip lit the internet on fire the moment it leaked out. People watched a young man knock, watched the door open, watched the shots come, and watched him fall. And to millions of viewers, it did not look like defense at all. It looked like an execution. And that single word, execution, is how a lot of the coverage and comment sections framed it from the very first day. And this was not even the only rapper the city lost that week, because another local artist was killed in a separate shooting within a matter of days. When the local news first reported J4's death, they did not even have his name yet.
This all comes just days after a 19-year-old was killed in the Peabody neighborhood of St. Louis. The whole incident was recorded, leaving some to wonder why no charges have been filed.
Here is where this third story splits completely from the first two, because there was no long investigation, no drawn-out courtroom fight, no years of waiting. St. Louis Circuit Attorney Gabe Gore declined to file any charges at all, pointing to Missouri's strong self-defense laws and its castle doctrine, which lets a person use deadly force to defend their own home without any duty to run first. Gore knew exactly how bad the video looked, and he knew how furious people were, but he argued that a single clip was never the whole picture. Telling the public, his office said they weighed other videos, witness interviews, and the wave of prior threats swirling through the feud, including reports of bullet holes already in the shooter's own windows from around that same time, evidence that the man inside had reason to be afraid. The rival, identified online only as Kendo, or Slapperson, was detained and then released, never publicly named and never charged, and the case was quietly closed. To really get why no charges came, you have to understand how much the law leans one way in that state. Under Missouri's self-defense statute, once a person raises a real self-defense claim, the burden actually flips onto the state to disprove it beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a mountain for any prosecutor to climb, especially when the shot was fired from inside a home. And it was not just Gore reading it that way. An unaffiliated defense attorney who reviewed the public clip admitted that, taken on its own, it might not look like reasonable self-defense, since J4 was on the porch and clearly holding nothing but a phone, yet even he stressed that prior threats and the way the law is written could still land the whole thing on the side of justified. So the outcome that felt so wrong to millions of people watching that video was, on paper, exactly what the law was built to produce. Not everybody in that world swallowed the clean self-defense story, though. Mo P, the older rapper J4, rolled with, went off about people out there treating this killing like some kind of trophy, arguing the shooter was simply scared and had 100 other choices besides emptying a gun into a teenager holding a phone.
Boy, that was your life on the line. Boy, you had to kill him, boy. Come on, bruh. Is you serious? Do these niggas be serious, bruh? Y'all just discredit them niggas, man. Fuck out of here. Self-defense ain't no motherfucking hat. Come on, man.
Mo P's bigger point underneath all that anger was simple. He argued the man behind the door had other ways out that did not end with a teenager dead on a porch, that he could have called the police or simply not answered the knock at all instead of firing rapidly into somebody holding only a phone. To him, a body like that carried no real credit, no bragging rights, because the person on the other end never had a fair shot. Whether the law agreed or not, that view spoke for a whole lot of people who watched the clip and could not make the math work in their heads. And on the other side of it, the rivals who came out on top did not mourn a thing. They celebrated, they hopped straight on, live to laugh about it and brag, while a mother was still trying to wrap her mind around the fact that her son was gone. That coldness, more than the shooting itself, is what people online could not get past, and it is a big part of why this case stayed in the conversation for so long.
And my phone finna go dead, but I just want everybody to know, cuz
You real?
Fuck
J.
J.
Cole
Cole.
smokers?
We kill him. We kill him. We the reason he did.
Y'all know how he doing.
So that is our three, and when you lay them next to each other, the pattern almost hurts to look at. In Atlanta, Bankroll Fresh died in a shootout with the childhood friend he had loved since they were little boys, brought low by jealousy over money and a shared woman, and No Plug walked free on self-defense. In Memphis, Casino Jizzle was gunned down at his girlfriend's mother's house by Michael Clayton, the father of her other children, in front of kids who will carry that image for the rest of their lives, and Clayton was charged with first-degree murder. And in St. Louis, J4 knocked on a door trying to protect his mother and was shot dead on the porch, with no charges ever filed against the man who did it. 3 young men, 3 different cities, 3 completely different reasons, and the very same silence waiting at the end of every single one. If there is one thread running through all 3, it is that the people closest to these men were the exact ones who ended up killing them. A best friend from childhood, an ex who shared her children, a rival who used to be a friend in the same daily group chat. None of the 3 were strangers, and that is the part that should stay with you long after this video ends, because the beef that gets you is almost never the one across the country that you argue about online. It is the one sitting right next to you, the one you were sure had already been squashed, the one you let your guard all the way down around. Rest in peace to all 3 of them. If there is somebody in your own circle you have been going back and forth with, somebody who used to be close before it all went sideways, do not let your pride talk you into believing a screen or a doorstep is where you settle it. Reach out to somebody you trust before it ever gets to that point, and send this to the one person in your life who really needs to hear it, because it just might be the thing that keeps them off a porch they were never supposed to walk up to.
Atlanta, a woman is dead after police say she was shot multiple times.
Is video of that shooting. The victim was inside her home when her boyfriend of 4 years fired through the door, killing her.
On the morning of February 5, 2024, a 51-year-old woman was in a deadly confrontation with her 33-year-old boyfriend over the custody of her own grandchildren. Hours later, the police would arrive at the 2200 block of Sandridge Place in Atlanta, Georgia, for a supposed welfare check. But what they discovered was a gruesome scene that left everyone in shock. Inside the home, they found the lifeless body of a woman behind the front door of her house. But the horror did not end there. The suspect, the man who had been living with her, was nowhere to be found. For hours, the police scrambled for answers, but it wasn't long until they found a chilling discovery that would change everything. This is the heartbreaking story of Samantha Bozeman. Samantha's story would take us to Atlanta, Georgia, a city known for its vibrant culture, historic landmarks, and role as a significant hub in the civil rights movement. But beneath the city's promising facade lies a darker truth. Atlanta's crime rate is over 120% higher than the national average. While the city thrives in many ways, its struggles with crime remain a pressing concern. And it was in this very city, amid its bustling streets and quiet neighborhoods, that Samantha Bozeman's life was tragically taken. Samantha Deanna Bozeman was born on October 27, 1972, in Elmore County, Alabama, where she spent her early years. While details of her early life are not widely known, those who were close to her describe her as a woman who grew into a pillar of strength and compassion. In her later life, Samantha eventually relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, where she built a life rooted in love, family, and resilience. People would often describe her as loving, down-to-earth, and fiercely loyal, a presence that brought comfort and calm to those around her. In time, Samantha went on to build a family of her own. Though the specifics of who she married and how long they remained together remain unclear, what is certain is the deep love and devotion that came of that marriage after she had 3 children. Eventually, Samantha's relationship with her husband came to an end. Despite this, Samantha continued to move forward with strength and grace. As a single mother, she raised her 3 children with unwavering love and devotion, guiding them as they grew up. And her commitment to family did not stop there. When the time came, in her late 40s, she embraced her role as a grandmother just as fiercely. Samantha adored her grandchildren so dearly. Matter of fact, she loved them so much that she went as far as adopting 2 of her grandchildren, taking them under her care and ensuring they had a stable and loving home. Her life was defined by purpose, and her drive to claim that came from the joy of being surrounded by family. But unbeknownst to Samantha, this very devotion would eventually be the cause of a devastating tragedy. But before everything spiraled, Samantha had lived a beautiful life. Outside the walls of her family, Samantha had other things going on. She loved to travel and took every chance she could to experience the world, creating memories that reflected her vibrant personality and zest for life. While her professional background was never made public, Samantha had a pretty stable income and could live comfortably.
Oh, here, look at the hammerhead. Look. Look, Army.
She could go places she wanted, care for her grandchildren with the life they deserve, and maintain a warm and welcoming home that many admired. As a woman now in her 50s, her life, though private in many ways, reflected a quiet success. A woman who had worked hard.
She was a beautiful spirit, just happy, joyful. She'll get on you if she had to, but she was just a happy, helping person.
Loved harder and carved out a peaceful space for herself and those she held dear. But despite her success, she still had needs that went beyond providing for her family and creating a secure home for her grandchildren. However, as she moved through her 50s, Samantha, like many people, longed for companionship. She had devoted much of her life to raising her children and grandchildren, and now that her children are more independent and can live independently, she can nurture her own needs and happiness. And because of this, she will start a relationship with a man who would change everything. That man was Maxwell Lartery, a 33-year-old man whose charm seemed to offer the emotional connection that Samantha had been missing. To the outside world and to Samantha's daughters, their relationship raised eyebrows. Given the societal norm, the nearly 2 decades of age gap unsettled people. But love makes people overlook the obvious, pushing them to go to great lengths just to feel seen, valued, and understood. And for Samantha, age was just a number. What mattered to her was that she finally got what she needed. But what Samantha did not expect was that the unsettling feeling of people wasn't just about the age gap. It was something sinister that no one could pinpoint for a while. At first, Max appeared attentive and affectionate. He gave Samantha the affection she was looking for. After years of putting the needs of her family before herself, Samantha finally allowed herself to embrace this newfound companionship. Little by little, Max became a regular figure in her life, and Samantha fell in love, something that she hasn't felt in years. And it wasn't long until Maxwell moved into her home with her grandkids, where they shared their day-to-day, and he became part of the family dynamics. But this move would be the start of Samantha's nightmare. As the months passed, Max's true nature began to show. The charming exterior that drew Samantha closer to him slowly faded, revealing the unstable person that he was. As it turns out, Max was not as established or reliable for a man in his 30s as he first appeared. As a matter of fact, Max did not have a steady job. He often jumped from one hustle to another, chasing quick money schemes that never seemed to pan out. Then starts the economic abuse. Samantha, who had worked so hard for the stability that she already had, suddenly found herself financially and emotionally supporting a man who did not seem to contribute anything to her life. Samantha had unknowingly stepped into the role of a sugar mommy who shoulders the bills, provides a roof over Max's head, and even covers his day-to-day expenses, while he did nothing but take. What started for Samantha as a relationship that was rooted in emotional connection eventually turned into a one-sided arrangement, where Max took more than he gave. And yet, despite these red flags, Samantha stayed in the relationship, hoping things would change. But instead of things getting better, they were about to take a turn for the worst. As they continued to stay in the same house, Max's demands from Samantha grew bigger, and the strain in their relationship became more apparent. One of his most unsettling demands was that Samantha remove her grandchildren from her own home. Max, who had contributed nothing to the relationship, had become too accustomed to the comforts that Samantha provided, and he insisted that the presence of the children was getting in the way of their relationship. He pushed for Samantha to give up custody of her grandchildren, which was unimaginable for her. He argued that having them in the house disrupted their life together, but Samantha loved her grandchildren too much to lose their custody. And so she made a clear boundary that her grandkids were staying in her home no matter what. But Max would not let the issue go quickly. To him, the children were a burden and they were getting the money he was supposed to be getting. But to Samantha, they were everything. The thought of losing them, of giving up the very reason she had fought so hard for a stable life, was unbearable. Yet Max's pressure became an ultimatum. Either she chose him or risked losing him for good. This was when Samantha realized how far Max would go to get what he wanted. She knew then that he was with a selfish man who was up to no good. The man who had once appeared charming and attentive now showed his true colors, a manipulative figure who wanted Samantha to sacrifice her family for his own comfort and selfish desires. His toxic demands only made Samantha feel more isolated, and with each passing argument, the man she had once loved was a stranger, someone who hid a sinister nature. This topic became the source of their constant argument, and Samantha grew tired of it. It was then that she made a decision that would change everything. Max's selfishness leads Samantha to a point when she goes to one of her daughters to say she is done with Max. She no longer wants to be with someone who cares about no one but himself. His constant disregard has worn down the love she once held for him, and she is ready to walk away for good. But just as Samantha began to reclaim her strength and take steps to end the relationship, something shifted in Max. Something dark, dangerous, and irreversible. On February 5th, 2024, Max's selfishness and cruelty would reach its climax. That day, Samantha had already been taking steps to separate herself from Max, both emotionally and physically. As she confided in her daughters, she made it clear that she was already preparing to move on and ready to cut Max off from her life. But instead of being set free, she will soon face a tragedy. That morning, in Samantha's home at 2200 block of Sandridge Place in Atlanta, Georgia, Max brought up the issue of removing her grandkids from her home again, only this time, the conversation escalated far beyond words. Samantha had reached her breaking point. She stood her ground and told Max that the grandchildren were staying and that he needed to leave. As the tension of that morning escalated, Samantha kicked Max out of her house, telling him it was over. But Max was not going to walk away quietly. What happened next would devastate an entire community. As their argument continued on the porch of Samantha's home, Max pulled a gun out of his bag. This was when he threatened Samantha that if she stepped out of her door, he would shoot her. But Samantha wasn't afraid, and she wasn't calm either. The Ring camera outside her home would later capture that final confrontation. In that video, Samantha's voice rang with the weight of all the disrespect, manipulation, and betrayal she had endured all this time. She was no longer backing down. She yelled at Max to leave. She was done. Then, she slammed the door shut, marking the end of it all. But behind the door and outside of her home, Max did not care that the door was closed. In a chilling moment that was captured by the camera, he pointed his gun at the door and fired 4 times. The bullets tore through the wooden door as if it were paper, and behind that door, Samantha was hit by 3 of those bullets. Her body collapsed inside her home. The same house she had created as a sanctuary for her grandchildren now turned into the site of her final moments. She was betrayed by the man she once loved, all because of an argument over her grandchildren's custody. Meanwhile, Max walked away as if he did not just end an innocent woman's life. But he didn't run, he did not panic, nor did he look back. Instead, he calmly fled the crime scene and did the unthinkable.
He's walking down the street calling her out of her name. He's still making threats.
Instead, Ms. Robinson and Ms. Hall say Lartery traveled about Metro Atlanta, trying to establish an alibi, finishing the night at a Hooters.
In an attempt to cover up his tracks and establish an alibi, he went out to party. Moments after taking Samantha's life, Max showed up at Hooters to party as if nothing had happened. No guilt, no remorse, no shame. He laughed, drank, and celebrated with friends. Back in Samantha's neighborhood, the neighbors started worrying after hearing the commotion that morning. While Samantha bled out and clinging to her life, She could have been saved if help had been called immediately, but it wasn't until hours later that they called the police to do a welfare check on Samantha. At 6:12 p.m., the Atlanta police arrived at the home to supposedly check in on Samantha.
Sandridge Place still completely blocked off. You can see right here police tape up. Atlanta police taking over the road entirely. They've been out here since 6 this evening, and we're told by Atlanta police that they were initially called to the house. It's this red brick home over here because of a welfare check, and when officers arrived, they could not get in, and so Atlanta Fire Rescue actually had to help assist in busting down the door to get inside of the home. Once inside, they found a woman who they say had been shot multiple times, and medical professionals deemed that she was deceased. And so now homicide detectives are out here trying to figure out exactly what happened, what led to her death. And so they are out here. They've been here 4 hours, and they are just still working on the situation. And of course, as soon as we learn more, we are going to let you know. But for now, they have this street still locked completely down.
But what they found was far worse than they had expected. When they called out and no one answered, they requested the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department come to the home to force their way inside, and inside was a gruesome scene. Samantha's lifeless body was discovered just behind the front door of her home, with gunshot wounds that left no doubt of the violence she had endured. And as the police looked closely, they discovered the wooden doors pierced with bullet holes, haunting remnants of the cruelty that had occurred just hours before. As they investigated the crime scene, the mystery of who could have ended the life of an innocent woman haunted them. The police immediately launched a homicide investigation. They immediately looked into the people who were living with the victim, and there was no other adult in the house other than Max. And so he was immediately taken in for questioning. But at first, he denied everything. He told the police that as their argument escalated that morning, he left the house to cool down at a party. However, it wasn't long before damning evidence would shift the case into sharp focus. As they investigated further, the police found crucial evidence that would expose Max's lies. The surveillance footage from Samantha's porch captured the final moments leading up to the fatal shots he fired at the door, which ultimately killed Samantha. The authorities now had concrete proof that Max had not only been present at the scene, but had been the one to pull the trigger. With the chilling discovery of the truth about what had happened, Max Lattery was charged with murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. But the battle for justice was far from over. What followed was a year-long trial that became a roller coaster for both Samantha's family and the community, who were left devastated by her sudden passing. The prosecution meticulously laid out the evidence, from the surveillance footage that showed Max firing at the door to his calm demeanor after the murder. Max tried to use Hooters as his alibi during the trial, but the surveillance footage that was in evidence was too strong to debunk. And so, on March 2025, the trial jury returned a guilty verdict on all the charges. Maxwell Lattery was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus an additional 5 years and 10 years if he ever made parole. This verdict served to bring some measure of justice to Samantha's family. However, while the sentence had a significant consequence,
I just was broken, completely broken, shattered.
We're tired of burying our women to abusers.
I break down and cry every single day. Some days I don't even want to go on.
it could never replace the life that was cut short. Meanwhile, Samantha's family was still left devastated by the tragic loss of a woman who had been the cornerstone of their lives. Her children and grandchildren, though receiving justice for her murder, would never fully heal from the emotional scars left by her untimely death.
Dang, my mom still is not gonna hug me, and my mom's still not here. But he needs to be locked up.
On February 17, 2024, Samantha's family and loved ones gathered to say their final goodbyes at a somber funeral service held at the Eunice M. Mitchell Memorial Chapel in Atlanta. After the service, Samantha was laid to rest in Hillside Cemetery, a place that would now serve as her final resting place. The burial, though heartbreaking, marked the physical end of her journey, but her spirit remained alive in the hearts of those who loved her. Samantha's story reminds us how easily manipulation and abuse can take root, even in the most loving relationships. Though justice was served, the scars left on her family will never heal. But her story is a powerful warning.
Is there a lesson for others in troubled relationships? I would say yes. I would say knowing enough is enough.
A call to recognize toxic behavior and never back down when it threatens everything you hold dear. Let us know what you think about this case in the comments below.